home to find your mom and your husband way too close, hands brushing, eyes locked. Then your phone buzzes with a video that flips your world upside down. A dance in the dark, a secret unraveling, and a bombshell you'll never see coming. Stick around. This story's gonna hit you hard. I was stirring the sauce on the stove when I heard the front door slam shut. The smell of chicken pot pie filled the kitchen, and outside, the July heat was thick enough to choke on. This was my daughter Kate's house in suburban New Jersey. A cute little place with white shutters and a big oak tree out front. I'd been staying here for a couple weeks, trying to clear my head after 23 years of a marriage that was falling apart faster than a cheap lawn chair. That's when Mike, my son-in-law, walked in. He's 32, with broad shoulders and a tired look that somehow made him more human. "Hey, Mike, you're home. I'm making your favorite chicken pot pie," I said, keeping my voice light, like it was no big deal. He tossed his keys on the counter and gave me a small smile. "Sounds awesome, Linda. Isn't that Kate's favorite, though?" His tone was soft, almost hesitant. I laughed it off, waving a hand. "Oh, come on. Same difference, right? You both love it." I turned back to the stove, but out of the corner of my eye, I caught him standing there just for a second, like he wasn't sure what to say next. That's when it hit me. A weird little spark I hadn't expected. My heart did this tiny flip, and I brushed it off quick. "No way, Linda," I told myself. "He's Kate's husband. Get a grip." But as I scooped the pie into the oven, I couldn't shake it. That flicker of something warm, something I hadn't felt in years. See, I'm 47, and life hasn't exactly been handing me roses lately. My husband and I barely talk anymore, and coming here felt like a chance to breathe. Kate's 29, a furniture designer with a fire in her that I've always admired. She's busy, always on the go, and Mike's the steady one. Works construction, doesn't say much, but he's solid. They've got this perfect little life, the kind I used to dream about. So why was I standing there, feeling like a teenager with a crush? It didn't make sense, but it was there, humming under the surface. Dinner was ready by the time Kate got home. She burst in, all energy, dropping her bag by the door. "Mom, this smells amazing. You're the best," she said, hugging me quick before heading to the table. Mike followed, quieter, and we all sat down. I served up the pie, golden and steaming, and watched them dig in. "Linda, this is unreal," Mike said after a bite, his voice low but genuine. I grinned. "Glad you like it. Just trying to keep everyone happy." Our eyes met for a split second. Nothing big, but enough to make me wonder if he felt it too. Kate chattered about her day. Some client who wanted a custom bookshelf, and I nodded along, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept stealing glances at Mike. He wasn't loud or flashy like some guys. He just had this calm way about him, like he didn't need to prove anything. And maybe that's what got me. Back home, I'd felt invisible for so long. My husband barely noticed me anymore. But here, with Mike, I felt seen. It was stupid, I knew it, but it was like a light flicked on inside me. Later, I was washing dishes when Kate came up behind me. "Mom, you okay? You seem kinda quiet tonight." I turned, forcing a smile. "Oh, I'm fine, sweetie. Just tired, I guess." She squeezed my arm. "Well, I'm glad you're here. It's nice having you around." Guilt twisted in my chest, sharp and sudden. She trusted me, her mom, her rock. So why was I letting my head wander somewhere it shouldn't? I dried my hands and stared out the window at the backyard. The sun was dipping low, painting everything orange. I thought about Mike again, that little pause he'd had earlier. Was I imagining things? Probably. But part of me didn't care. After years of feeling stuck, this tiny spark, wrong as as it might be, made me feel alive. I shook my head, muttering to myself, "Linda, you're losing it." Here's the thing. I didn't come here to mess anything up. I came to find myself, maybe patch up the holes life had punched in me. Kate and Mike's world was supposed to be my safe spot, not a place to stir up trouble. But feelings don't always play by the rules, do they? That night, lying in the guest room, I kept replaying the way Mike looked at me, like he wasn't sure what to make of me either. It was a small moment, nothing dramatic, but it stuck. And deep down, I wondered, was this just me being lonely? Or was there something real here? I didn't have an answer yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't ready to let it go. The next morning, Kate was out the door before the sun was even up, off to some big meeting with a client. I wandered into the living room, still in my pajamas, and there was Mike, sitting on the couch with a mug of coffee. "Made an extra one for you," he said, holding it out. His voice was steady, but his fingers twitched a little, and he wouldn't look me in the eye. "Thanks, Mike. You're always so thoughtful," I said, letting my tone soften just enough to hint at something more. He gave a quick smile, then turned to stare out the window like he needed an escape. I sat down across from him, sipping the coffee, and watched him fidget. That little spark from last night was still there, buzzing in my chest, and I couldn't ignore it. I should have left it alone, I know. He's Kate's husband, my daughter's rock. But after years of feeling like a ghost in my own life, that small bit of attention from him felt like air. "Rough night?" I asked, keeping it casual. He shrugged. "Just work stuff. Keeps me up sometimes." I nodded, then stood to grab the creamer from the kitchen. When I came back, I leaned against the counter, close enough that he'd notice. "You're too good to her, you know that," I said, smiling. He glanced up, caught off guard, and mumbled, "Just doing my part." But the way his jaw tightened told me he felt something too. Later that day, I decided to bake an apple pie, Kate's favorite, and Mike's too, if I'm honest. The house smelled like cinnamon and sugar by the time he wandered in from the garage. "Linda, you didn't have to do this," he said, eyeing the golden crust on the counter. I cut him a slice and handed it over. "Oh, come on. I love seeing you guys enjoy it." He took a bite, and his face lit up. "This is unreal. You're a wizard in the kitchen." I laughed, maybe a little too loud, and leaned in closer. "Glad you think so. I like making you happy." Our eyes locked for a beat. Too long, really. And he cleared his throat, stepping back. "Kate's lucky to have you around," he said, fast, like he needed to remind us both. That moment stuck with me. I kept finding excuses to be near him, grabbing a glass of water when he was in the kitchen, asking about his day when he got home. It wasn't anything big, just little things, but I could tell it threw him off. He'd answer quick, then find a reason to leave the room. Part of me felt bad, but another part loved it. The way he noticed me, the way I could make him pause. I'd been invisible for so long, and now here was this guy who couldn't quite hide that I got under his skin. That night, Kate was still out, and I found Mike in the living room, flipping through a magazine. I plopped down on the couch with a slice of pie for myself. "You're quiet tonight," I said, taking a bite. He glanced over, hesitant. "Just winding down, I guess." I shifted closer, not too obvious, but enough. "You work too hard, Mike. You deserve a break." He looked at me, really looked, and for a second, I thought he might say something real. Instead, he just nodded. "Maybe you're right." I smiled, letting my hand brush his arm as I stood up. I usually am. He froze, just for a second, then flipped the page like nothing happened. Looking back, I can see I was testing the water, dipping my toes in, seeing how far I could go. It wasn't about hurting Kate. I'd never want that. She's my kid, my pride and joy. But there I was, 47 and lonely, chasing a feeling I hadn't had in years. Mike didn't push back, not really, and that made it worse. Should I have stopped? Yeah, probably. But when you've been numb for so long, even a flicker of warmth feels like a fire you can't walk away from. Was I wrong to enjoy it? Maybe. I kept telling myself it was harmless, just a little fun, a boost to my ego. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. Mike's a good guy, loyal to Kate, and I'm her mom, not some stranger. Yet every time he smiled at me, every time he lingered a second too long, it fed something in me I couldn't shut off. I wasn't ready to call it quits, not yet. I just wanted to feel alive, even if it meant dancing on a line I shouldn't have crossed. Kate texted me that she'd be late, some big project at work keeping her tied up. I found Mike out back, hunched over an old garden bench, a screwdriver in hand and sweat dripping down his forehead. The sun was blazing, and he looked beat. "Hey, Mike, you look wiped out. Let me grab you a lemonade," I said, heading inside before he could argue. When I came back with the glass, he was wiping his hands on a rag, the bench half fixed. "Thanks, Linda," he said, taking a sip and sitting down on the grass. I plopped down next to him, close enough that our knees almost touched. "You're working too hard out here. Kate's lucky to have a guy like you," I said, letting my voice drop a little, soft and warm. He stared at the lemonade, then up at me, his eyes flickering with something, nerves maybe. "She's the real deal, you know," he said, dodging my compliment. I smiled, resting a hand on his shoulder for a second. "Yeah, but you're pretty special too." He tensed under my touch, but didn't pull away right off. "I should finish this up," he mumbled, standing quick and heading back to the bench. I watched him go, my stomach doing flips. I knew I was pushing it, but that little buzz I got from being near him was addictive. That night, Kate was out with friends, and the house felt too quiet. I turned on some old jazz, Ella Fitzgerald, smooth and easy, and caught Mike coming in from the garage. "Hey, come on, dance with me," I said, grinning like it was just a goofy idea. He hesitated, then shrugged. "All right, why not?" We swayed to the music, keeping it light at first, laughing about how bad we both were. But then I stepped closer, my hand lingering on his arm. The air shifted, his smile faded, and I could tell he was nervous from his quick glance away. "This is fun, right?" I said, looking up at him. He stopped moving, his jaw tight. "Linda, this isn't right," he said, stepping back fast. I tilted my head, keeping my tone playful. "Sometimes the heart doesn't care about rules, Mike." He shook his head, running a hand through his hair. "I can't do this. Kate's my wife." He turned and walked off, leaving me standing there with the music still playing. My chest tightened, part guilt, part thrill. I knew I'd crossed a line, but I couldn't stop myself from wanting more. He'd felt it too. I saw it in his eyes before he bolted. Looking back, I can see how dumb I was being. Kate's my daughter, the best thing I've ever done, and Mike's her guy. But there I was, 47 and restless, chasing a spark like some lovesick kid. I kept telling myself it was harmless, just a little fun to shake off the loneliness. But was it? Mike's reaction hit me hard. He wasn't playing along anymore, and that should have been my cue to back off. Instead, it made me want to push harder, see how far I could take it. I sat on the couch after he left, staring at the record player as it spun. "What are you doing, Linda?" I muttered to myself. I thought about Kate, her laugh, her trust in me. She'd never suspect her own mom of stirring up trouble. And Mike, he's a good guy. was I messing with that? Maybe because for once, I felt like someone saw me. Not just the mom or the wife nobody cared about anymore, but me. It's funny how you can know something's wrong and still keep going. I could have stopped right there, let it fizzle out. But that night, I didn't want to. I wanted to feel that rush again, even if it meant risking everything. Mike pulling away only made it more real. He wasn't just brushing me off. He was fighting something too. That's when I realized this wasn't a game anymore. It was a tightrope, and I was already halfway across, too stubborn to turn back. Did I feel bad? Sure, a little. But the bigger part of me, the part that had been numb for years, was wide awake now. I wasn't ready to shut it down. Not yet. I just kept wondering, if I kept going, would he give in? Or would it all blow up in my face? Either way, I was in too deep to pretend it didn't matter. Kate was gone for a work trip, and the house felt like a ghost town. I found Mike in the living room, flipping through a book. His shoulders slumped like he hadn't slept in days. I couldn't take the silence anymore. "Mike, we need to talk," I said, plopping down next to him on the couch. He sighed, setting the book aside. "Linda, we've gone too far. This'll break Kate's heart," he said, his voice low and rough. I reached for his hand, my fingers hovering near his. "What about us? Don't we deserve to feel something too?" He looked at me, his eyes torn, but before he could answer, the front door clicked open. Kate stormed in, her suitcase still in hand. "Surprise! Flight got canceled," she said, all smiles, until she saw us. Her face froze. "What's going on here?" Her voice shook as she dropped her bag. I yanked my hand back, heart pounding. "Kate, it's not what you think," I blurted, standing up fast. Mike jumped in. "Yeah, we were just talking." But she cut him off, eyes narrowing. "Talking? With her hand on yours? Mom, what the hell?" She took a step back, like she'd been slapped. I tried to explain. "Honey, I swear, it's nothing serious." But she wasn't hearing it. "Nothing serious. You're my mom. And you..." She spun to Mike. "You're my husband. How long has this been going on?" Her voice cracked, and tears welled up. Mike stood, hands raised. "Kate, listen, it's not like that. We just..." She didn't let him finish. "Don't lie to me," she yelled, then bolted upstairs. The door slammed so hard the walls shook. I sank back onto the couch, my stomach twisting. Mike ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "This is bad, Linda. This is real bad." I nodded, barely able to breathe. "I didn't mean for her to see that." He stopped, staring at me. "But you meant the rest, didn't you? All those little moments." His words hit hard, and I didn't have an answer. Yeah, I'd wanted it. The attention, the spark. But seeing Kate's face, that was a gut punch I couldn't dodge. Minutes later, she came down, her eyes red but fierce. "I trusted you both," she said, her voice steady now. "Mom, you're supposed to protect me, not stab me in the back. And Mike, I thought you loved me." She grabbed her keys. "I'm staying at Jen's. Don't call me." Mike stepped toward her. "Kate, please, let's talk." She shook her head. "Number, I'm done." The door slammed again as she left, and the silence swallowed us whole. Mike turned to me, his face a mix of anger and guilt. "We screwed up, Linda, big time." I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. "I know, I didn't think it'd end like this." He sat down, head in his hands. "She's right, you know. She trusted us, and we threw it away." I wiped my face, trying to keep it together. "I was lonely, Mike. You made me feel alive again. Was that so wrong?" He looked up, jaw tight. "Yeah, it was, because it hurt her." I wanted to argue, to say we could fix it, but deep down, I knew he was right. Kate Kate's my daughter, my whole world, and I'd shattered her trust for a stupid rush. "What do we do now?" I asked, voice small. He shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe she'll forgive us. Maybe she won't." He stood, grabbing his jacket. "I need air." He walked out, leaving me alone with the mess I'd made. I sat there, staring at the wall, replaying it all. How did I let it get this far? I'd come here to escape my problems, not torch my daughter's life. But that spark with Mike, it was real, and I'd chased it like a fool. Now Kate was gone, and I couldn't undo it. I kept thinking about her face, the hurt in her eyes. It was my fault, and that killed me. Then my phone buzzed, a text from Kate. "Check your email." My heart stopped. I opened my laptop, hands shaking, and there it was, a video file. I clicked play. It was Kate, sitting in her car, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, Mike, I saw you dancing last week. I didn't say anything because I didn't believe it. But now, I'm pregnant.